All right, let's jump right in. When you hear that word, inheritance, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably money, a house, maybe some family heirlooms. But what if I told you that in the Bible, inheritance is actually one of the biggest, most central ideas in the entire story? And get this, it has almost nothing to do with what you'd find in a last will and testament. It's a huge concept that stretches all the way from the beginning of Israel's story to the very end of the Bible.
So let me ask you something to get us started. What is the most valuable thing you could possibly inherit? Just think about that for a second. Your answer probably says a lot about the world we live in today. But the biblical answer? Well, it might just surprise you.
And here it is, the big contrast. Our modern answer, it usually revolves around stuff you can touch and measure, property, wealth, status. But the biblical answer is about something so much deeper. It's about belonging, identity, and purpose. You see, in the Bible, inheritance isn't really about what you get. It's all about who you are and whose you are. It's the language of family, of relationship.
So yeah, we're totally redefining a familiar concept here. In the Bible, inheritance isn't just about passing down land. It's the entire framework for understanding who belongs to God and who gets to share in His kingdom. It's pretty much the language God uses for His whole plan of redemption. Now, what's really fascinating is how this whole idea gets started way back in the Old Testament. It's not a one-way street, where God just gives stuff to people. Instead, the Bible describes this incredible two-way relationship, this kind of dual movement of inheritance between God and His people. And that idea is the foundation for everything that comes later. Just look at this verse. The direction is the complete opposite of what we'd expect. It's not us getting an inheritance, it's God Himself who claims an inheritance. He chooses the nation of Israel and says, "These people, they are my portion, my treasured possession." I mean, wow, that's family language. It establishes an identity. To be Israel is to belong to God. And then the movement flips. As His treasured people, Israel also receives an inheritance from God, the promised land. Now, this isn't just a piece of real estate. It's a physical, tangible sign of God's faithfulness to His promises. So you see this beautiful back and forth. God has a people, and those people have a place in His purposes. The two ideas are totally inseparable.
Okay, so this is the crucial part. This isn't just a bunch of random verses scattered throughout the Bible. No, when you lay out the key passages side by side, a single, clear, 5-stage storyline emerges. It's a narrative arc that traces this idea of inheritance from one tiny nation all the way to the entire cosmos. It's basically the story of God reclaiming the world.
So let's trace how this thing builds. Stage 1 kicks off with God choosing one nation, Israel. Then in Stage 2, the whole promise just explodes outward, giving the Messiah the nations. Stage 3, we see that inheritance, the kingdom, is shared with God's people. Then Stage 4 clarifies how we get in on this, by being adopted into God's family. And finally, Stage 5 blows the doors off, expanding the inheritance to its ultimate scope, the entire renewed cosmos.
So, diving into Stage 1, the book of Deuteronomy describes a world where the other nations have basically been disinherited after rebelling against God. But God doesn't give up on His plan. Instead, He does something strategic. He narrows His focus to one man, Abraham, and his descendants. Israel becomes the vehicle, the starting point, through which God will eventually reclaim everyone else. And this verse just perfectly illustrates that next giant leap. In Psalm 2, God speaks to His anointed king, the Messiah, and makes this absolutely astounding promise. The inheritance is no longer just the land of Israel, it's the nations themselves. We're talking about the entire world. This was always the plan, you see, to move from one nation back to all nations. So that promise, it sets the stage perfectly for the New Testament, where this idea of a global inheritance becomes a reality. The focus shifts to how anyone and everyone, not just a single ethnic group, can become a part of this story and receive this incredible inheritance through the Messiah, Jesus. And this is where the concept becomes so incredibly personal. The Apostle Paul, writing in Romans chapter 8, says that through faith, we're adopted right into God's family. And because we are now His children, we are co-heirs with Christ. Think about that. It means we get to share in everything that belongs to Jesus. Our claim to this inheritance isn't based on our background, our power, or how good we are. It's based purely on our relationship with the Son.
Okay, but how can we be sure about this incredible future promise? It sounds almost too good to be true, right? Well, the book of Ephesians gives us this really powerful metaphor. It describes the Holy Spirit as a down payment, or a guarantee. Just like when you put a down payment on a house, it secures the final purchase. In the same way, the presence of the Spirit in a believer's life is the living confirmation that the full inheritance is secure. It's definitely coming.
And then, get this. The pattern we saw way back in the Old Testament flips back around again. And this is just mind-blowing. Paul writes about the riches of God's inheritance in the saints. Do you see that? It's not just that believers get an inheritance from God. Believers are God's inheritance. We are his treasured possession. It just shows how deep and personal and mutual this whole relationship is.
So where does this grand story finally land? It all culminates in the biggest possible vision you can imagine. The final inheritance isn't just a kingdom or power or authority over nations, it's the complete and total restoration of creation itself. The story doesn't end with us escaping the world, but with God renewing it completely.
This verse from Revelation just captures the breathtaking scope of the endgame. The promise expands to its absolute final form, to inherit all things. The inheritance is nothing less than real life in a renewed heaven and a renewed earth, where God lives with his family forever. It's the total fulfillment of that promise of belonging that started all the way back with that one nation, Israel.
So let's end with this. If the whole biblical story of inheritance is ultimately about God restoring his creation and his family, and not just about handing out property, how does that change the way we see our purpose in the world right now? It really transforms our view from one of just owning stuff to one of hopeful, restorative participation in what God is doing. It's definitely something to think about.